Was I even born then?
Were you even born then? Well,
I was a child.
You were a child.
Yes.
40 years ago, it was 1984, and a
very young
record
child.
came out that changed history. I remember it very well because I was a teenager. The next hour of the show, we celebrate that record, and after 8:30, Bob Geldof brings in a new version of the song. So from now, it's all about Band-Aid.
The Zoe Ball Breakfast Show.
The situation in Ethiopia has gone well beyond the stage at which words like tragedy and disaster have any meaning.
It's Christmas 1984.
There are 11 million people starving in one country.
So from me, Bob Geldof, from Major League Singing, a million thanks to everyone on the record.
Hello, this is Paul McCartney. This is Simon from Duran Duran. I'm Woodward from the Style Council.
Sara from Bananarama. We were sandwiched between Bono and Sting, and George Michael was standing behind us. An incredible day.
It completely changed my whole life.
1.25 million copies in 1 week. Britain's brand new #1, Band-Aid. Do they know it's Christmas time?
Years ago, in 1984, Bob Geldof and Midge Ure gathered some of the biggest musicians in the world with the mission to raise money to help end hunger in Ethiopia and to create one of the most iconic Christmas songs of all time. This morning, we're after your memories, listeners, of Band-Aid and your stories of what it was like hearing that song for the first time back in 1984. And for those of you who weren't born in 1984, this is an amazing history lesson. This is a monumental moment in the history of fundraising, in the history of music, and it's an incredible story. So over the next hour, we're going to try and hear from as many people who were involved as possible. Shall we start with these ladies?
Hi Zoe, Keren and Sara from Bananarama here. We can't quite believe it's been 40 years since the recording of Band-Aid. It really was a huge privilege to be part of such a momentous and groundbreaking event that day.
And Siobhan, who was in Bananarama at the time, was of course also there on the day.
When we got the call from Geldof, he rang our flat and asked us to turn up on Sunday for the recording of the charity record. We felt very strongly that we wanted to help. There were so many other artists there. You know, looking now at the video, it's incredible to note that besides Jodie Watley, we were the only girls in the room, just us three and Jodie Watley. So it shows you how times and music has changed.
Thank you to Siobhan. So if you have memories of hearing this record for the first time, 88-291, and also after 8:30, Bob Geldof here himself, and he's bringing in a brand new mix of that song, which is something else, mixing the old and the new together. It's a beautiful thing. Very soon, we're going to hear from more people who made history that day 40 years ago. Marking 40 years of Band-Aid this morning, let's welcome another star who was there on the day. Good morning, Gary Kemp. Gary, always lovely to see you.
Morning, Zoe. Thank you for having me on.
Can you believe it was 40 years ago?
Well, a lot has happened since, but what surprises us is that the record still feels exciting and relevant, and you still hear it every year. So there's still some sort of youthful energy that's still there. I think it's because it meant so much to the general public. It is a people's record, isn't it?
It really is. I think that's why it stood the test of time. There's great stories around the making of this record, and you flew in, especially from Germany, to be part of it.
Yeah, it just so happens that the night before we were doing a TV show with Duran Duran in Germany, and we were so competitive in those days. You know, we didn't hang out as bands, and we were always slightly moaning about each other in smash hits or whatever. And then we ended up on these two private planes, separate private jets, because that was the only way we could get back in time. And I remember us, desperately saying to the pilots, make sure we land first. We were competitive even in the air.
It's so good. This is the tea that we needed spilling. So there's effectively a race to get to the studios, but when you do get to the studios, somebody's got to get up first and sing in front of all your peers and in front of all your heroes and the people that you're, sort of brilliantly competitive with. How do you decide who goes up first?
Well, I think, everyone... It was a funny atmosphere when we first arrived because I don't think anyone knew how to make a charity record. Midge said, who's going first? And Tony Hadley put his hand up first. And I was very proud that he did that. And Tony went in and he did his line first. And I think he was a brave guy. But no auto-tune in those days. Everyone had to get in and make their stuff work straight away because there wasn't much time.
I know, and you think of that, how different people's voices are and how people naturally sing in different keys. That's quite tricky to get that mix right as well. Yeah. How did it feel to be part of it at that point? Or could you just not fathom how enormous and how important this would be?
No, I think by the end of the day, I distinctly remember thinking this is the greatest day of my life. It felt very special to be part of it. But the real glue, I thought, was Paulie Yates, because she was holding on to Fifi, their little girl, and Growler, I think, was their dog. And so it became a kind of Geldof family affair. And he's going to dispute all of this, obviously, but she was so funny and witty, and she just sort of walked around making everyone feel much more relaxed and comfortable. And I, to this day, when I watch those documentaries and the shots, we miss Paula.
Yeah, my goodness me. And she was so enigmatic and so fun and naughty, and everyone was in awe of her. So I imagine that she was the perfect tonic. Incredible memories. Thank you so much for sharing them, Gary. You have a new song out as part of your third album, which is called This Destination, and the single's called This Destination. Tell me a bit about the album and this single.
Yeah, well, I've been working on this in between touring with Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, which I've been doing for the last 6 or 7 years. This particular track I wrote last. I think there was quite a difficult period I was going through, and some of the album does deal with that anxiety. But I certainly came through it, and This Destination, you can read it as a love song saying I'm here waiting for you, but really it was about me understanding that music is what I do. That's my destination. That's where I have to be, and that's what makes me happy, and reminding myself not to forget that.
Yeah, it's your lifeblood, isn't it? It's what you were born to do.
Well, it is, because I'm lucky enough to do other things, and I go off and act, or I do my podcast, and I'm a parent,
Yeah.
Soon to be a grandfather.
Oh, I know. It's exciting. There's going to be babies around again.
I'm so excited about that.
Oh.
But at the end, it's me locking myself in a room on my own and writing songs, and that's what I've always done, and that's what I can't give up.
Long may you continue to do that, Gary. Thank you so much for sharing your memories of Band Aid on this incredible day. Let's play This Destination. They really are. Gary has a great podcast, by the way. You should check it out. So it is 20 minutes past 8. You're sharing your memories of Band Aid. In 1984, I was only 18 months old, but my parents have played Band Aid continuously every Christmas since. I absolutely love it. Rob the Trucker. So I was in the last year of secondary school when Band Aid happened. We did a school assembly all about it. Gosh, how can that have been 40 years ago? Alison, same here, we sang it at school. I remember the news reports. I remember seeing Bob on the television. I remember all the conversations, and I remember being really inspired to get involved as well as a youngster. So when I hear those bells at the start of the song, it takes me right back to being 10 and watching all my favourites singing together. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand every time. So many memories that you've been sharing on text. This is Sharon.
I'll never forget seeing Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet arrive, and Bananarama piling out of a small white car driven by their manager. Hearing the opening chimes of the song always takes me back to a more simpler time, a time when music really did seem to feed the world.
It really did seem that way, didn't it, Sharon? This is Susan.
I was working for Southern Gas in Reading in 1984, and when we heard Bob Geldof's appeal for the Ethiopian famine appeal, a group of us arranged to push and pull a small British gas van from Gasworks Road, Reading, in Berkshire, to our headquarters in Southampton over 3 days.
Oh my goodness, Susan, how much did you raise? That's epic. Do you remember the British gas fans? I remember them very, very well indeed. Keep your memories coming in. 88291 on the text, 08000 288 291 on WhatsApp. And this is really fun. Here's Beverley Knight, who was in Band Aid 20 back in 2004, sharing her memories.
I can remember Do They Know It's Christmas from the original lineup of Band Aid going to number 1 in 84, like it was yesterday. I was about 11 years old and I bought the record. The original single, to me, evoked that darkness, that desperation, the vastness of how huge the problem was, just in the way it was produced, with all the ambient sound coming from it. But it was a really solid pop song. 20 years later, I had no idea that I would end up being, on that remake.
It's quite amazing, actually. If you were alive at the time, you remember those news reports. They were so shocking and so devastating and upsetting, and it made everybody, want to jump on and be involved and do anything they could, like Susan with the van, and someone else who was there was Simon Le Bon.
Bob actually called me and Sting first. That's what he said. He said he reckoned if you could get us to say yes to it, then everybody else would say yes to it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a fantastic idea. And I actually went over to a little studio where Bob and Midge were working on the song. And I got to sing the whole song. So when I turned up at Psalm West Studios that day to record it, and there were all these other artists, I thought, well, which bits are they going to sing? And of course, I just got the one line. And most of the time, I think I was with Bob and Midge, who were kind of overseeing it. But there was one incredible moment. We were standing around the piano, and Trevor Horn was playing on the piano, and we got through our bits, and we got to the end of the first verse, and Bono gets that line, "Well, tonight, thank God it's them instead of you." And Trevor Horn goes, he stopped playing, and he goes, "Oh, what a voice." And all the rest of us singers went, "Yeah." When I look back on it now, I feel incredibly fortunate to have been around at that time and to be included in what is one of the 3 greatest Christmas songs ever written and recorded. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be that. And it gives me a little flush of joy every time I hear that song. And you hear it a lot, so I get a lot of joy from it.
Thank you so much to Simon and to Beverley and to Susan and everyone who's shared their memories. Keep them coming in, 88291. And don't forget, Bob coming up after 8:30. And he's got a brand new version for 2024 of a song. We know all the words, Ken. We know all the words. Here's the emotions. Ladies and gentlemen, 40 years since Band Aid was first released, and it was thanks to this man and his friend Midge that the magic was made. Bob Geldof, how are you this morning, darling?
Exhausted.
Oh, you
finally
there.
Surprised.
You finally got to this moment. How has it been 40 years since Band Aid? I remember this stuff better than I remember stuff last year, to be honest with you, Bob.
Yes.
I remember, watching the news and seeing the shocking, devastating scenes of what was happening in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And then I remember you. And I sort of guess I came to you more as Bob there before I came to your music, actually.
Thanks very much, Zoe. That really helped my career.
I discovered the Boomtown Rats later, don't worry, Bob. I mean, there must be quite incredible memories for you going back those 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I see the film that Jill Sinclair has made of all the outtakes. I never thought about it, but there's these scruffy, spotty kids who go on to take over the world, basically, all slouching up. And, of course, a few months later, I did
Who's ringing? Is that me or is that Bob? Is that no? Is your phone ringing?
Oh, is it?
No, I don't know. It's not mine. It's you. It's probably Simon Le Bon or something.
Yeah, it is.
Don't forget to plug this.
There you go.
It was Bob's phone. Yeah.
No, it was Trump. He wants to speak to me about Africa.
Don't even start. Where were we? So you were talking about who you were.
On the film, which is on iPlayer tonight and released on telly on Thursday evening on BBC4. I mean, when she showed it to me, and these two doofuses, Midge and myself, sort of going, where are we going next? And then all these kids basically just out of school, spotty, sort of wandering up the street. And a few months later, I'm in America standing in front of Mount Rushmore of our culture. Willie Nelson, Ray Charles, Smokey Robinson, Dylan, Paul Simon, and they're so professional, and there's music sheets. And I look at this film and our lot, picking their noses. And when one of them said, "I'm not singing that. What did you go first?" Oh, it was school.
Total school.
But these are global megastars,
But I guess that's the thing, isn't it? No one knew really what was happening. You just knew, Simon was saying Simon Le Bon was just saying he remembers singing all of the song and then hearing Bono and thinking,
and
wow,
then we thought we'll just choose one line, Simon.
He's not taking it badly, to be honest with you. So Band Aid really celebrates and demonstrates, because it was the first of its kind, coming together to make a change and make a difference.
I think for me, and this, sorry for going all serious now, I think was the promise of rock and roll fulfilled. What it had always meant to me, as a kid, not a great time in Ireland, and suddenly these boys and girls of 19 and 20 were singing about change, the possibility of change, the inevitability of change, and that the platform they were using, the language they used, the rhetoric of rock and roll was the platform that could actually initiate change. So, and they sort of lowered down this golden thread of possibility to the purple ether of rock and roll, and I clung on to it. And when the Rats happened at that key time of 76, 77, all of us lot of that generation, the Pistols, the Clash, the Jam, the Ramones, the Talking Heads, it was about that. It was about change. So that's all I've ever understood rock and roll to be about. And this was to be, as far as me and Midge was concerned, an instrument of change. We weren't really bothered about the quality of the song as such, that would it work as a thing. And on that first morning at Simon Bates on the radio show, I said, it doesn't matter if you don't like George Michael. It doesn't matter if you don't like George, Boy George or whatever. I said, just buy it, because things will change. And it has, I read in an American paper last week, the most impactful song ever in rock and roll, because what it did is it suddenly the whole world copied this. That led to Live Aid, that led to billions of people, and politics had to go with it. So by the time we get to Live 8, we are now addressing the global structures of the economy and politics to put an end finally to the agony of poverty. It hasn't. So that's why we're back here again 40 years with the collection of all those artists over the years, and on the physical record, including Freddie, including Elton, including all those, but also 1D, also, Sam Smith, also Sting, also Bono, also Sinead, Chris Martin. And it's such an amazing record. It is the history, it is the arc of British rock and roll over 40 years on one 3.5-minute track. And David Bowie introduces us and then wishes us all a happy Christmas at the end. Perfect!
It's perfect.
Shut up!
Shall we hear it, Bob?
Yes.
Here it is. This is
the first time.
Our first time anywhere in the world. This is Band Aid 40, and it's beautiful.
It's